Hello, Garland Nixon here, and I'm on vacation, and we're going to talk about Ukraine from the front seat of my truck. Let's talk. Hello, Garland Nixon here, and I'm talking to you. So, from the front seat of my truck. I'm actually on vacation for a week. Even the runny mouth YouTube hosts every now and then got to take a little time to themselves. So I am, hanging out for a week and having a good old time. But I wanted to touch base with everyone. August, it seems like to me, you don't get as many YouTube shows in August because people are doing vacation, family stuff, all that kind of stuff. So here we are. Thanks a lot, everybody, for taking time out of your busy schedules. Let's go. I was watching the Africa. I've been paying attention to the Africa stuff the other day, and I realized something, and that is that I've seen it coming for a while. Let me make sure everything looks good, sound good, everything's good. Yes, all right, and that is that, um, and told this story before. Forgive me if you've heard it before. The infamous story about the little girl with the bunny and her parents buy her the bunny. She's at the pet store and she loves the bunny so much and she hugs and squeezes this bunny so tight that when they get home, her parents open the door and the bunny is limp in her arms because she smothered the bunny. She hugged him to death. And many of us do this with our children, with our significant others, all that. We hold on to it so tight that we destroy whatever it is that we're trying to hold on to. It is an age old philosophical discussion that's been, that was going on, when 2,500 years ago, when Greeks were sitting around tables having philosophical discussions. That's one of the things they were discussing. When you want something so bad, how do you keep it? And if you want it so bad that you become destructive in holding it, you get reckless in trying to hold on to it. I say all that to say this. So the U.S. empire, kind of, let's be honest, kind of took up the mantle from the Third Reich to some extent, basically saying, there's been empires in the past. There's been the Ottoman, and we could name them on and on and on, right? But all of those empires were unlike ours in that they were going to fall eventually. They were going to fail. No, 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 they weren't perfect. At some point, they were going to fall, and so therefore they weren't perfect like ours. But ours is different than theirs. Ours is never going to fall, and it had to do also with this. I mean, and you got to be honest about the U.S. empire and the U.S. culture. It has taken on a religious connotation where the people who believe in this American exceptionalism, the U.S. empire crap, the people who believe in it as a matter of faith, right? If you think about why do we believe in things, right? Is it empirical evidence? We talk about the Enlightenment period. I could go on about that, but pre-Enlightenment, the belief was all knowledge is revealed by God. Well, that was a fraud, to be quite frank, because the people that were saying all knowledge is revealed by God then said the only people that can learn how to read and that can even read the Bible and interpret the Bible are the clerics, right? Which, if you think about it, eventually the term clerk, right? A person like a bookkeeper, a clerk came from what? Cleric. The preachers, the priests, they were the only ones who were allowed to learn how to read and write, to know, to interpret the Bible. The clerics, the bookkeepers, right? So what you had a period where they argued all knowledge is revealed by God. And at post-Enlightenment period, it went to something different. We can use empirical evidence, we can use data, we can use our reasoning, right? Um, and so where we are, I believe, in and there's flaws in all of that stuff. That's a long discussion. But what I think happened with the U.S. empire is we got a combination. We got a combination wherein the argument of the neoliberals, the argument of the American exceptionalists is that they use data, they use empirical evidence, they use information, right, to come to their conclusion. So they argue that there's science, use science, stick with the science. That is their argument. But if you look at the things that they say about American exceptionalism, what they truly try to argue is that God created a natural order. And that natural order is capitalism. Capitalism is the best, it's part of the natural order. And that part as a also the natural order, God bless America, all this God in America stuff, America, God, why are those things always put together in U.S. culture? God and America come together, God and country, what is that all about? It's an implication that there's a natural order, that there's a hierarchy, and that hierarchy that is natural, placed here by God, puts the United States in charge of everything. Now, that's how we get this kind of quasi-religious belief in the American empire and the unipolar world and the superiority of the American empire. We get that by this argument, basically, that this is a natural order. Now, there is a obvious contradiction to that idea before we go any further with that. Here's the obvious contradiction. Here's the obvious issue with arguing that the United States empire is here as a result of a natural order that was placed here by God, and therefore, this is just the way things are, deal with it. If you really believed that, think about this. The U.S., and I'm going to get back to the if you really believe that, I got to make a point to make that statement. The U.S. says this basically argues informally, natural order, hierarchy, God placed the United States there. God bless America, right? Okay. If you believe that this is an order that was created by God in the same way that you believe in the laws of physics, I can go on about that, but you can't, if you try to do this, I'll put it to you like this. Let me simplify it. If you jump off a building, you'll never go up. Right? That's simplified. If you jump off a building, you'll never go up. You can say it's God. You can say it's physics. You can say whatever you want. If you jump off a building, you ain't going up. Okay. That being said, you don't have to defend that. I don't have to go fight somebody. I don't have to go overthrow a government to make sure that if you jump off a building, you'll never go up. If you jump off a building, it is the natural order of this universe. And remember, we've determined what the word up means relative to this planet. It is the natural order of this universe that if you jump off a building, you'll never go up. I don't have to defend it. We don't need aircraft carriers for that. We don't need to go around the world and blow up other countries. We don't need to sanction anybody. The natural order of the universe is quite simple. If you jump off a building, you'll never go up, right? If you argue that the natural order of the universe, that the God-created order of the universe, you're going to see where I'm going here, is that the United States, that the world is a hierarchy, and the United States is at the top of the hierarchy. You don't need to defend that, do you? If that is the natural order of that God placed for all of us, that the United States will eternally be the leader of the universe, the hell you gotta defend that for? That's God's work, God's decision, if you truly believe that. So what you'll say is this: do you have to keep Russia down? No, God will handle that. How about China? No, we don't have to. You see, this is a natural order. In the same way that if you jump off a building, you'll never go up. If you try to surpass the United States and become the leader of the world or equal in power, you ain't got to worry. God will just smite you. He'll hit you with some lightning, whatever he's got to do. Maybe there'll be an earthquake. I don't know. God works in mysterious ways if you believe that, right? But whatever the case, if you believe that the nature of this planet is that one particular country should be in charge and must be in charge, and that is the natural order, then just get out of the way and let it happen. Or maybe you don't really believe that. Maybe it's a fraud. Maybe you say you believe that so that the people in your country will not question it and will not question what you're doing, so that you can now do anything you want. And in the end, you can just say to the people of the country, when the people of your country say, why am I suffering? Why is electricity so expensive? Why is it that we had a better life and now our life is going to hell? When the people in Europe start asking questions, the people in America, why are we spending all this money for Ukraine? How do you answer those questions? Do you say, well, we've got to do this because Lockheed Martin needs money. We're trying to eat, bro. We're trying to get paid. Or do you say we're defending a natural order? We're defending the natural order. We're making sure that if you jump off a building, that you'll always go down, because you never know, the Russians or the Chinese or the Iranians or the Maduro, Assad, Cuba, whatever you want to do, they're going to come in and they're going to screw up gravity, and you might go up. We got to protect that. No, we don't. So there is a contradiction in arguing that the United States is the leader of the free world, will always be, and that is the natural order of things. In fact, here's what I'm arguing. If you're fighting against it, you're actually making the case that it's not the natural order. If you are fighting to make something happen, you're making the case that that's not a natural order. If you jump in the water, in the river, you ever get those lazy rivers? Right? If you say we put on the inner tube, we jump in the water. I say that because I'm on vacation, right? You jump in the water and it's going to flow in this direction. That is the nature of things. Water flows downhill, or maybe you got little jets under the water. You put in your tube and you flow, and you point and say that water flows that way. You ain't got to fight that. All you got to do is jump in the water. It's going to take you in that direction. But if you say it's flowing left to right, when it's really flowing right to left, and you jump in and you start flowing left to right, you're dog paddling, you're swimming, you're doing everything you can to go in the opposite direction, because that isn't the natural order of things. You're just trying to convince people that it is. So my argument, for starters, is that the people in charge of this nation clearly know, of the U.S. empire, know that it isn't the natural order of things, that the U.S. empire is in charge of everything. And the evidence is that they're fighting against the natural order of things. They're ready to go to war. They're ready to fight. They're ready to sanction. Why? Because the order is changing and they don't like it. And they don't know how to deal with it. And so they're pushing back against something. But what are they pushing back against? They're actually at war with modernity. They're at war. The U.S. empire is at war with a changing world. They're not, see, think about this. The U.S. sends nuclear subs to South Korea. We're in the Taiwan Strait, the South China Sea, threatening China. We're building bases. We got to go to Finland and Sweden. We got to surround Russia with all of these bases and all of this infrastructure. Oh, wait a minute. There's something going on in Africa. We got a bomb in Africa. Oh, the Middle East. Well, we can't have Iran doing every nook and cranny in the world. The United States now is saying this country, that country, these people, this area. Oh no, this is a choke point where ships. We got to address all of that. The entire world. So the United States isn't at war with Russia or China or Iran or Venezuela or Cuba or on and on, or Niger or Burkina Faso. No, the United States is at war. The U.S. empire, I keep saying the United States, is at war with the change of the world, with modernity. And that war expresses itself through the United States doing and you heard me use this metaphor before, doing what a drowning man does. He falls in the water. He can't swim. Oh my God. He's reaching for everything. He tries to grab something and pull on it. If you get near him, he'll try to grab you and pull on it. He's in desperation and he grabs anything that he can pull on, or any way to save his life. Out of desperation, he reaches in all directions, right? There's where the United States is. Oh no, Iran's over here doing something. We can't have that. China, Russia. Oh, South America. What about Peru, Venezuela? Oh, no. Pakistan, look what they're doing. We got to overthrow their government. It is a sign of utter and sheer desperation. And that's what we're looking at. We're looking at utter and sheer desperation. So therefore, the United States empire is the neocon. And when I say the U.S. empire, I mean the neocons, right? The people who protect the religion of American exceptionalism and U.S. empire, the priests and priestesses, whatever the hell, you get my point. Who knows? The people who feel that it is their job to maintain this order, they're at war. We ain't. Regular people ain't. Never are. We just people want to go to work, have fun with their families, go to a bar and meet a nice girl and get married and have 3.5 kids in a minivan and a nice little home and a dog they come home to that waves, maybe a cat, whatever, a bird. How about a bird? A ferret, for God's sake. Can't a person have a ferret and mind their own business without these neocons dragging us into nuclear war? That's all we want, a stinking ferret. How hard is that? Too much to have? Although, I don't know. I always wondered about people who have ferrets for pets. That's kind of weird, isn't it? And boa constrictors. I don't want a pet that's looking at me like a meal. A pet that's looking at me like, that guy feeds me, but he looks kind of succulent. He's kind of warm. They're rubbing around you, and you're like, oh, he likes me. He's like, man, that's some tasty skin you got there, bro. Don't turn your back on me, or I might have to eat you. Nah, I'd rather have a ferret, so forget it. Forget the complaints about ferrets. Better than a boa constrictor. But I continue. I digress. So what we're looking at is this. It's obvious. The Ukraine conflict has done something that none of us anti-war or anti-imperialist or anti-colonialist or anti-whatever the hell you want. Here's the way I put it. People who just want justice, who want people in the world to be able to pursue their lives as they choose, right? None of us could have done what the neocons have done, no matter how hard we tried. None of us could have made it so clear and obvious that what we're being told are lies, and then could have unraveled the lies in the way they have, right? A couple of things going on. Ukraine is really, and it's terrible. Don't get me wrong. I wouldn't want to be on the battlefield. I wouldn't want anybody I love on the battlefield. I wouldn't want anybody. There's a war. Innocent people are dying. That's terrible. Darn it. Sorry about that. My phone's ringing, and I don't even know what it is. Oh, hold on. Sorry about that. And of course, I'm doing it, and it would say potential spam, right? I'm trying my best. It's hard in a front seat of a pickup truck. All right, so let me continue. So what I'm saying is this. Let's start with Europe. Part of what we have here. Ever going to get some light, for God's sake, man? This is dark in this truck. But oh well, you guys will listen to what I'm saying, and one way or the other, you don't have to look at my ugly face. So so maybe it's a blessing in disguise for you guys. All right, so let me continue. The U.S. decided that we're going to take out Russia and China, right? We're going to take out Russia and China, and we're going to start by first with Russia, and we're going to use that. God, heaven, I got no light here. Maybe I'll just move closer. And what we're going to do is we're going to set up Ukraine. We're going to turn it into a fortress and use it to beat the hell out of Russia as a blunt object, right? And to hell with the Ukrainians, let them die like dogs, right? Funny that they always tell us how they're standing up for Ukraine. Here's what I got to say. If that's how you stand up for people, if what I'm seeing going on in Ukraine is supporting Ukraine, do not ever support me. I don't need that kind of support. Hey, we're supporting you, Garland. Really, what are you going to do? Well, we got this tank full of sharks, and they're hungry. And we've thrown blood in the water, and we're heaving your body in next. You'll be torn to shreds by the sharks, and that way you won't have to be oppressed by some evil dictator next door. And I'm like, why don't I work out a deal with the evil dictator next door? I don't like being torn to shreds by sharks. That's basically how they're supporting them, right? How great is that? So, in going after Russia, the first thing they did, they want to consolidate their power over Europe, right? So they're going to do a couple of things, and most Americans don't know that. Most people don't know that there's two. They know two, but not the third. And one of them is they want to destroy. They want to destroy China. They want to destroy Russia, right? Well, at least bring them to heel, bring them under their power, conquer them. But they also want to conquer Europe. See, that's another big part of it. If you think about it, if you're the U.S. empire, John Bolton even wrote it in his book. If you think about it, the three really big and powerful economic blocs are Russia, China, and Europe. And the Europeans think they're on their side, and they don't understand how the neocons think. You idiots, they're not on your side. So the bottom line is, they in going after, it's like killing two birds with one stone, right? Use the Ukraine project to take out Russia, but also use the Ukraine project to, and this is critical if you think about it, and it's so glaringly obvious. You say to Europe, don't buy stuff from Russia because they're evil. And you're helping evil people, so do not buy anything from these evil people. Okay, so fair enough. Where do I buy stuff from now? I'm not buying evil gas from Russia. I'm not buying evil anything else from Russia. Well, where should I buy those things? From us. Okay, because Russia will use that stuff to control you. And certainly, Victoria Nuland would never do that. You can trust her. She just didn't, she'd never try to use money. She'd never try to sanction you, cut off your energy. No, no, no. The evil Russians would do that, even though they've been pumping energy into Russia since the 50s, and they've never done it now. I'm sure they do it. They've done it before. I'm sure they never do. They won't. They do it now, but we wouldn't. So they don't buy stuff from Russia. They buy stuff from us. We make more money. It's going to be more expensive from Europe, which is going to hurt Europe's economy. You're then going to steal all of Europe's industry, bring it to the United States, and reindustrialize the United States, and we win and Russia loses. And of the three economic blocks that you needed to knock down the size, you've knocked Europe, one of them, down the size. Any way you look at it, you've won by that. You've won that much. You've knocked them down the size. You've impoverished the people of Europe. You've made sure they can only buy stuff from you. So therefore, Europe is screwed. There's no way out of this for Europe. Because if Europe says we're going back to Russia, Russia will never trust you. You've come out and said we hate Russians. You didn't say, Europe didn't say we think Russia is doing wrong and therefore we need to. No, they said we hate Russians, everything Russians. We despise them on a racial level. We hate Russians. We don't want Russian music, Russian books, Russian anything Russian. Russians aren't European. They're like those people in Africa and Asia, in the Middle East. They're different. They're not good as us. Screw them. That's what you've said to the Russians. And the Russians heard you. And one of these days, Europe is going to come back to Russia and say, Russia, we need you. And Russia's going to say, yeah, right. You need us. We'd be happy to sell you energy for the same price as the Americans are selling it. You want to pay them a fortune? Damn it, you'll pay us a fortune or you won't get it. The time will come when Europe will come back to Russia and they're going to get the finger. But the U.S. empire, in wiping out Europe economically, in subjugating them, in deindustrializing them, they're creating a dynamic where the next group of politicians are going to be in Europe 5 to 10 years out, right? As these elections go, at minimum, the next group of politicians who run Europe, at minimum, will be somewhat anti-American. In some countries, maybe most, maybe many, they will be furious at America. They will want revenge on America. They will want out of NATO. They will recognize how they're being abused. So this, in subjugating, deindustrializing, and impoverishing Europe, you're creating a dynamic where the Europeans are going to hate your guts. Maybe 5 to 10 years out, you blew up their pipeline. So part of what's happening is, in the short run, in the first few months or while this war is going on, they've got Europe where they want them. They got them by the short and curlies. There's going to be a price to pay for that, and the price is going to be high. You know what the price is going to be? The price is going to be Europe. That's going to be the price. The price in the long run will be Europe. Now, they've already lost. The Middle East is game over. The U.S. created a dynamic where, in going after Russia, and this was another huge mistake, in going after Russia, they attacked all of their quasi allies. There were a lot of countries that were a combination of allies and vassals, right? A combination, such as in the Middle East. These were vassals that did what the U.S. wanted, their bidding. against the will of their people in their region more often than not. But you had a tiny group of oligarchs in the Middle East, these leaders, these princes and kings and emirates who were living real well. In many countries, they gave the people just enough to keep them fed and keep them from overthrowing everything. And they did what the U.S. told them to do. I believe that the big mistake the U.S. made was saying we're going to control the price of oil. We want to hurt Russia, and therefore we're going to cap oil prices, and we will now control international oil prices. At that point, the what do you call it? The Middle Eastern countries recognized that they were next. They recognized that this is what we sell, man. It's oil. And now these people want to control the prices. We control. So they said to the U.S., man, don't do this. We control the prices. And the U.S. said, screw you. We'll do what I want. Don't you understand? You're our vassals. You will do what we tell you to do. And they tried to clamp down on them. And if you understand the Muslim culture, man, don't put a gun to a Muslim's head and just say, do what I want or I'll kill you. They'll fight you to the last bullet. You're not going to threaten the people in the Muslim culture and that ain't the way to get people in the Muslim culture to do what you want, to push against them and threaten them. They're going to fight the hell back. And when they did that, even their vassals said, oh, the hell with that. That ain't happening. Let me see if can I get a little bit of light? I don't know what the hell. I'm struggling, guys. I'm doing the best I can. As I said, maybe the best case scenario is you don't have to see my ugly face. So I'm going back and forth and side to side. No matter what I do, it don't work. But I'll just keep talking. So we next look at Africa. In Africa, so the Muslims, in trying to control the prices of oil, and then when the Muslims said, we don't like that, and when they gave them the finger and said, screw you, you will do what we tell you to do, that was the end of it. The Muslims then called China. The Muslim world then basically said, we're ready to talk. These people are out of their minds if they think they can push us around and tell us what to do. Over, game over. So this is part of the Ukraine project. The Ukraine project is to wipe out Russia. And a lot of that is an authoritarian, totalitarian grip on the world where you now tell everybody in the world, we control prices, we control waterways, we control who can be on the air, where, we control who can be on the internet, on what platform, everything we're going to control. And a lot of people got pissed off. Now move to Africa. What happened? And this is critical. If you look at France, let's face it, France is simply enslaving the people of Africa. What France is doing in Africa, one of the things I believe in when you talk about how bad things are is the issue of degrees, right? There are degrees. For instance, a person gets angry at somebody, and their reaction can be measured in degrees. The degree of reaction. For instance, one person gets mad and they just look the other way and they stare at you, or they stare away. They give you the cold shoulder. Another person says something that is, what's the term? They use, there's a term, and it's called passive aggressive. Is everything okay? Yeah, everything's okay. Passive aggressive. The next person yells at you. The next person takes a swipe at you. The next person shoots at you with a shotgun. There are various degrees. There's a continuum of how severe the pushback is, right? So when you look at France and Africa, the furthest degree of exploitation would be slavery. The United States enslaved the Africans way back, right? That's one degree of exploitation. But when you go along that continuum, you get to a lesser degree of exploitation where you don't bring them from their home country to your home country to make them pick cotton. You leave them there, but you steal every dime they got, so they're impoverished damn near as if they were slaves, and they don't really have any rights because you got a puppet government in charge. It's a lesser degree of slavery, but it's a way of neoliberal capitalism still saying we control everything. We're going to impoverish the citizens of this group of people, and we're going to take their stuff. Now, keep in mind, the reason that in slavery you have to move the people and bring them to your country is because the resource that you're stealing from them is labor. That's the difference. If you're stealing their labor, you must bring their bodies to your place and have them pick cotton or grapes or whatever they're picking, right? Mine, whatever it is. If, in fact, what you're stealing is their resources, then you don't need to bring their bodies physically here. You get some level of their labor because you get them working for next to nothing. But what you want is what's under the ground in their country. So it's a different degree of exploitation rather than just bringing them as slaves, because you let them to stay home, but you're still exploiting them because that's their country and that's their natural resources, and they should get a fair price for it, and they should be able to live a decent life because they've got natural resources in their country. They were born there; it's damn now they're theirs. What France says is this: no, because we have the authority, we'll put a puppet government in charge, and we'll steal all your stuff and keep it. The Africans now, and I think particularly after the summit in Russia, the two things they look at the U.S. empire and they see them bullying everybody, and they see the Russians fighting back and having some success. And now they're like, well, somebody can fight back. You can fight back. See, that's a big part of the Ukraine conflict. And that is, as long as you're a bully and nobody fights back, everybody feels like you can't fight back. You can't fight against that bully. They're too powerful. You'll be crushed. As soon as somebody sees somebody fighting back, everybody's willing to fight back because they're like, well, it ain't all that bad after all. So the Africans, they don't have much. It's all in France. But they see somebody fighting and they say, well, damn it, we'll fight too. We might as well. And they also see that you're distracted. They see that you're distracted in the South China Sea. They see you're distracted in Iran, in the Persian Gulf. They see that you're distracted in Ukraine, and they're saying, and if we were ever going to fight back, this is the time, because they're at their weakest. And do they really want to take on us too? So now what's happening in Africa? There ain't no way for France to get this back, man. What are you going to do? France, here's the bottom line. They have used political and military machinations to control Africa, to rob the gold and all of the stuff from Mali. And a lot of people didn't even know they were doing it in the country. Well, now the world is seeing that, and everybody can look and say, man, that shit ain't right, man. Come on, you guys. I mean, I didn't know much about people are like this. I didn't know much about what was happening in Mali and Burkina Faso and these West Africa. But now that I see it, I'm like, man, that's kind of screwed up, France. You know what I mean? They're looking at France and they're like, France, come on, man. Come on, France. It's like you're doing something and people don't know about it. And then they're like, hey, Garland's cool, man. Hey, bro, what's happening? And then they find out, I don't know, you visited Epstein Island. And they're like, Garland, man, we thought you were good, bro, but man, Epstein Island, what's up with that, man? You're up to some devilish shit. Come on, bro, what's up, right? We see that, we thought you were a cool dude, and little did we know you were up to Epstein Island, foolishness, right? Well, France was running around with their friggin' baguettes and their red berets and their French wine, and everybody was like, hey, the French are pretty cool. I mean, they're not perfect, but, the French are okay. They got berets and, baguettes, wine, things of that nature. They're okay. And now they've been exposed, and people are like, oh man, you guys are rotten, man. People are like looking at the French like, dudes, are you really doing that in West Africa, dudes? That is uncool, man. I mean, when you were hiding it, okay, but now we're like, can we really, as a world, countenance what you're doing in West Africa? That is totally uncool. And then you see like pictures from West Africa, and there's like 6-year-old kids. Like with dirt all over them, coming out of a mine with like a bucket on top of their heads with gold or uranium, growing like 4 arms. You're like, oh man, really, France? That's what we're doing now. We're like using child labor to mine uranium and stuff like that, and just like leaving 80-90% of the people in this country to have no electricity, and your country is like, you got baguettes, for God's sake, and they don't even have electricity. Uncool. So you've exposed to the world the brutality, the viciousness, and the inhumanity of colonialism and of the U.S. empire. And France can do that. Why can France do that? Because of Africa. Because France can say to a country, do what we want, and the U.S. says, and the country says no. France can use U.S. drones, U.S. bombers, U.S. space-based intelligence. They can use U.S. hackers. They can use the U.S. empire to keep these West African countries in power and rob their asses blind. It's horrible what France is doing. It's inhumane. There's no excuse. There's no way to defend that, right? And now it's obvious. And now the entire world can see it. And the entire world's like, it's pretty fucked up, France. Chill out, dudes. But France, if they don't do this, and this is what we learned, they're a fraud. Because if they don't do this, they're poor. If they don't rob these people of their gold, they're poorer than these people. Let's face it. If Mali has gold and France is rich because they steal it, if they stop stealing the gold and Mali keeps it, things will go the other way around. And I guess the people in Mali will be riding around in like Teslas talking about the French. Man, look at those French. They sure are poor bastards. Hey, let's get together some care packages and send some food over for the French. Those poor sons of bitches are starving to death, right? That's what they'd be doing in Mali and Burkina Faso if, in fact, they weren't being robbed by France. Seems obvious to me. Meanwhile, France, for all these years, have been saying, when people are like, man, why are they so poor in West Africa? France is like, well, culturally, these people are backwards, and intellectually, they're just, inferior beings. And, we wish we could help them. We send a little food every now and then. But what are you going to do with these people? For God's sakes, they're intellectually inferior. They can't do what they want. You're robbing them. You got a ski mask on, robbing these people, and you say the victim is inferior to you as you rob them. Sorry, France, it's all out now. And here's the other issue. Once it comes out, you can't put the genie back in the bottle. Let me give you a story. Frederick Douglass, famous guy, was a slave. Brilliant man. If you ever read him, the guy was just a freaking genius, right? But one of the stories from Frederick Douglass is like this, and this is going to be very important. France, you should listen to this story. Well, Frederick Douglass was 8 years old. You might have heard this story. I've told it before, but it's critical. And he was doing what slaves do, working, being beaten, things of that nature. And one day there was a slave who, and Frederick Douglass told this story, finished all of his work early at 11. He worked really hard. It was hot. And he sat down in the barn. He finished doing whatever he was with the horses. And so he finished his task. He worked hard to finish his task. And he sat down. And one of the slave drivers comes in and says, you lazy bastard, get up and start working. And the guy tells him, look, man, I worked hard this morning. It's hot. I busted my butt so I could get finished and take a couple minutes to sit down and rest. The guy says, you lazy, N-word, no doubt. You're going to do what I tell you to do. The guy says, no, I'm not going to do it. And Frederick Douglass had never seen a slave say no before. So the guy says, I'm going to go get the plantation owner. Slave says, I ain't doing it. So the plantation owner comes and he's got his musket. He's got his gun. And the slave says no. Well, the slave was extremely tall, so he runs out in the water because he knew in the river that they couldn't come get him because it was too deep and whatever. The slave master couldn't swim and they wasn't going to come in the water after him. So he says, I'm not doing it. I'm not coming out of the water. So Frederick Douglass in his life had never seen a slave before. In his life, say no. He was 8 years old. He'd never seen anything like that. Like, wow, holy crap. This guy's telling the master no. And that guy was no longer a slave. He was no longer a slave because he had decided, I will do what I want. You can do whatever you want, but you can't make me do what I don't want to do, right? So the slave owner says, no, you come back in and do what we tell you to do, or I'm going to shoot you. And the slave says, you can shoot me. You can do that. You got a gun? I don't. But I ain't doing it. Nope. So the guy says, I'm going to count to 5, and then if you haven't done it by then, I'm going to shoot you. The slave says, well, you can count to 100. I ain't shooting you. I ain't doing it. The guy counts to 5, shoots the slave, and kills him. And Frederick Douglass saw that. Now, okay, at that time he won. He killed the slave. He's dead, blah, blah, blah. But what happened was Frederick Douglass learned about that it's possible not to be a slave. He learned didn't have a vision that somebody could say, I'm not going to do what I'm told by my master, right? And let that be a lesson for the people of the United States and Europe. Think about that slave, okay? That's you. Be that slave. But at any rate, so as a result, in the long term, Frederick Douglass ended up, running away, escaping, learning how to read and write, being a brilliant orator, pushing back against slavery, being one of the advisors to President Lincoln, one of the men who helped get rid of slavery. Why? Because he saw what it was like not to be a slave. And once he learned that, he couldn't unlearn it. He knew. He didn't have a concept. Like right now, we got people, as soon as they tell us to do anything, Garland, go out here and do this. People are like, yes. As soon as the government says, do anything, drink this, take this, inject this, walk into this wall, whatever they tell you to do, there are a lot of people that just say, yes, master, and do it. A lot of the people in this chat, a lot of us, hell with that. The government says, do this. We're like, no. You can, well, we'll throw you in jail. You can throw us in jail. You can throw us in jail. You can hang us. You can execute us. You can do whatever you want to, but you can't make us do what the hell we don't want to do. That's what the government's learning, that there are people in this world, there are people in Europe, there are people in the United States, there are people in this world that will take that stand that says, you can threaten me, you can hang me, you can kill me. If you kill me, you got to dispose of my body. You can do whatever you want to. The answer is no. And what are you going to do? If everybody says no, you're going to kill everybody? If everybody says no, you're going to hang everybody? Because that's where we are. Do what you got to do. The answer is no. Well, that's all of that is to go back to Africa. Now, someone has said no. It's the Frederick Douglass moment. Niger said, we're tired of this bull crap. We're overthrowing the government. We're putting in somebody else. Burkina Faso, one of the poorest countries. Mali, because of France, Mali, Burkina Faso, these are some of the poorest countries in this world. But what did these countries said? No. Damn it. So the U.S. empire and France, well, we'll bomb you. And what they say, we'll fight back. If you do that, it's war. Does that mean they'll win the war? No. No. If somebody says, I'm going to attack you, and you say, I'm going to defend myself, does that mean you're going to win the fight? No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't mean you're going to win the fight, but it does mean that you're going to fight, right? I think what we're seeing is countries in Africa saying no. Now, do you have more weapons, more bombs, more drones? You got all those things we don't have? Fine. But what are you going to do? How's France going to go back to Niger? Let's say France bombs the Royal Palace, and the U.S. and France, and they send soldiers in, and they say, okay, we killed the people who were involved in the coup, and now the country's ours. All right, back to work. And the people say, kiss my ass. Not doing it. We ain't going back in your minds. We told you that we'd had enough. So you got this country. We ain't doing it. What are you going to do? Bring in people from another country? We're not working in the mines anymore. And you know what? If you try to work our mines and take our gold, we'll kill you. We'll kill the people in the mines. We'll hang them. We'll blow the mines up. We'll fill them with water. What happens when the people in Niger and the people in Mali say no? A, we want our own government. And B, if you try to take our stuff, you got a country full of people. Are you going to kill everybody in the country? What's the world going to say when you try that? And that's what you're going to have to do. Are you going to steal our stuff? Not without a fight. So the Ukraine project created a dynamic where people saw the Russians fighting the empire, and from those who had been victims of U.S. and colonialism and imperialism for all of these years, and might I add, people, let me say this again too to all of you guys, including us. We are victims in the same way that the Africans are victims of U.S. imperialism and colonialism. So are the everyday working class people of the U.S. and of France and of the U.K. Think about this. All the trillions of dollars that have been spent in the war on terror, that was my hard-earned tax dollars, right? Some of it they just printed. Where would we be in America if that money was spent on us, on healthcare for us, on roads for us, on infrastructure for us? We are victims. Our jobs sent overseas, our lives wiped out, our families suffering as a result. So we can look at the Africans. The Africans got the cojones now enough to stand up to the imperialists and say, you're screwing our lives, we're fighting back. The question has to be, do we have the same wherewithal that the Africans have? They ain't got much. We got a little bit more. Are we just happy with the little that we have as it dwindles away? Because it's going to be gone. It's on the way out the door. Or do we just say, well, we're just going to, as long as we got a few pieces of bread to rub together and a little bit of water, we got a little bit more than that. Well, we got a lot more than the impoverished people of, say, Africa or Latin America. But that's going to turn around in the other direction because they ain't having it anymore. And it is the Ukraine project that created this dynamic. It is trying to use Ukraine to take out Russia that has exposed the brutal reality of the U.S. empire. That's what it is. The fact that we're trying to hold on to it has put an exclamation mark on imperialism. And the only way, think about it, the U.S. foreign policy, the colonialist foreign policy is one of brutality. It's one of theft and brutality and piracy, right? The only way to hold on to it, the only way that the neocons would know what to be to hold on to that is to double down in what they're doing. So that means in order to try to hold on to a brutal and 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 and, and uh, 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 um, unjust system that enriches the oligarchs of the US and Europe, the only way that they would try to hold on to it is to be more brutal and more unjust and to steal more and to be more authoritarian and totalitarian, both inside and outside the empire. They're doing it by trying to come down on these countries. Australia, you will do what we tell you. Japan, Philippines, South Korea, you guys will do what we tell you to do, even though it's against your best interest. So the whole world's looking at that saying that ain't good. They're saying to us, look at us. Americans now, most Americans feel like, a plurality of Americans feel like we're giving too much money to Ukraine, and why even those who support this monstrosity feels like it. In the US, Biden just said we want to send them another 25 billion. So we're suffering too, and we're going to keep suffering. I think the time is coming, and we're getting here, where the excesses and the brutality of trying to hold on to unipolarity, utilizing Ukraine as a pawn, is exposing the brutality and viciousness and injustice of the empire worldwide. The only question is how long before that comes home. Because in the same way, think about this, in the same way that the U.S. empire has to be vicious and brutal to hold on to its power in Africa, Europe, and etc., right? And authoritarian, it has to do the same thing here. And that's why we're getting censorship, and that's why we're getting charging people with all kind of crimes and going after the guy who is the leading opposition, trying to use lawfare to take him out, trying to use lawfare to take out somebody that would expose your crimes, such as Julian Affair. This authoritarianism is the same authoritarianism that's being used around the world to hold on to the unipolar moment. It's being held at home too, because the people at home are starting to ask too damn many questions. The people at home are starting to say, we want to have a honest discussion about what you're doing. We're unhappy with what you're doing. We have questions for you. Why are you doing this? Why are you telling us this is true when we have evidence that it's not true? And when we try to discussion on YouTube, they say you got to go. They just threw Scott Ritter off YouTube. Why? Because they don't like what he's saying. Why don't they like what he's saying? Because it exposes what they're doing. So now they're like, look, we got to crack down at home, because these dumbass people are asking questions, and we don't want those kind of questions because we don't have answers for them. And we got to crack down on the Middle East. We got to come down on those people. We got to come down on the Africans. We got to come down on the Latin Americans. We got to overthrow these guys. What about Pakistan? They're becoming authoritarian, brutal, totalitarian everywhere in the world. The people in Europe, the people in the US have to wake up to realize we're getting it too. And that the idea that people are like, here's what kills me. Yay, they're charging Trump. That people can't see that for what it is. That people can't look at it and say, look, if you guys got a problem with Trump, that's easy. Just beat him. He can run. I can run. Anybody can run. Just beat the man. When I look and it's like, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to twist and bend the law in every which way we can to charge Trump. They literally changed they literally changed the law in New York so Trump could be sued. They changed the law. Then, okay, we got a case that the Federal Election Commission won't go after Trump. So they feel that it's not a crime, the FEC. So some local prosecutor in New York says, well, I'll give it a shot. I'll charge him. Then they come back. Hey, Biden's got boxes and boxes of classified documents. Hillary's got a server full of them. Mike Pence has them. All these people got them. But Trump is different. We got to charge him with them. Everything they're doing is going after Trump. Why? Again, it's exposing the reality that they're desperate, they're totalitarian, authoritarian people. And the only way they know to try to hold on to power is to try to oppress those who so much as ask questions about what they're doing. To hold on to power, they need a certain narrative, not to be true, because they know it ain't true. They need a narrative to stick. They don't need it to be true because they know it ain't true. They made it up, but they need it to stick. They need to say, here's the narrative. This is true. It don't matter whether it's true. We have a consensus that says it's true. You got to act as though it's true. And now people are saying we ain't doing that anymore, particularly after COVID, right? We ain't doing that anymore. We got a right to ask questions. So the Ukraine project, I think, let's put it a couple different ways. It's a horrible thing in that innocent people are dying, war is going on, people are suffering. So what a horrible thing war is. So we have to oppose that and say we hope there's not a war. It's an interesting phenomenon. Since it's here, we might as well evaluate it for what it is. It's an interesting phenomenon because the U.S. empire said they were going to do this, and then they did it. And they're doing, out of desperation, they're trying to use the Ukraine war and a number of other authoritarian tools to stop any opposition, to stomp out any opposition internally or externally to the U.S. empire's unipolar power. That's what they're doing. It anything that opposes it internally and externally, they're doing everything they can to destroy that, to crush it. And it's too obvious now. They can't control themselves. They can't stop it. And if they don't, here's the problem they have. If they don't do this, which they have no choice, if they don't do this, then things just move forward. And their other option is to accept the reality that we've moved into an ultimate multipolar world, which they don't have the ability to do. If they do this, then it quickens, it intensifies the move to multipolarity in the world, and it exposes them. And I've seen this before in organizations where, and I could go into it, but in an organization, and it ain't the one you think, it's a different one. Most people don't know, but it was an organization I was involved in. And they had people who were in charge, who were crappy, horrible people, but they knew how far to go before they really screwed things up. They wouldn't take it to the point that really screwed things up, but they put their toes right up to the line. Everybody was pissed off. The people at the organization were pissed off. The people who dealt with the organization was pissed off, but they knew just how far to go before they would go over the line and blow this thing up, right? And then a new group of leaders came in, and those people didn't have that restraint. Excuse me, got a little bit of, I don't know what it is, got a little bit of something in my throat going on here. But they didn't have that restraint. But when they started going overboard and acting in a brutal and authoritarian way, in going over the line, they made it obvious what they were doing, and they blew up the whole thing. And all of them got fired, were gotten rid of, and they brought in a whole new group of people. So in that, the people in charge went over the top, stepped over the line, and trying to hold on to power. In a way, it was good because it exposed the reality of what was going on, and there was change because of that. So in the event that we all survive, which I believe we will, I believe we'll get through this. Not because of the U.S. empire, but because I believe that the people, the Russians and the Chinese have enough sense to know what they're dealing with. And I think that they are wise enough to navigate this very dangerous time, that there are some adults in the room, and they're in Beijing. I believe this. I believe there are adults in the room, but I believe those adults are in Beijing. I believe those adults are in Moscow. I believe those adults are in Tehran. I believe those adults, believe it or not, are in Riyadh, that even the MBS, I didn't think much of him now, but he's acting in the best interest of Saudi Arabia, and that's all you can ask a leader to do, whether you think whatever you think of him. So I'm not going to hate on MBS, but there are adults in the room. The adults realize how dangerous the neocons are, and I think that the adults in the room will act in a moderate manner to defend themselves. I think that the adults in the room are having the discussion that, look, the U.S. is very, very dangerous, and we've got to move slowly. I think that's one of the reasons that the Russians are moving so slowly and deliberately in Ukraine, because they understand that, okay, people are like, well, you could win it anytime you wanted. Why don't you just put this powerful Russian machine in and just finish them off? And I think the Russians are, well, we don't need to. We got a lot of other things going on, that this is part of what we're doing. It ain't all of it. But also, the neocons are very dangerous. We're not going to antagonize them to the level where they may do something crazy. We're going to continue to move slowly and deliberately on this thing. And I think that's part of it. That's why I think we will get through it, because I believe there are some adults in the room. They just ain't in Washington or London. And ultimately, there'll be no way out for the neocons, for the colonialists and imperialists who have been enslaving and mistreating countries around the world, and been doing, and now they're bent on doing the same thing to their own people. That additionally, in the same way, in Europe, there'll be political changes. There'll be a political struggle for people who want some level of, I would say, a nationalism, not a ultra nationalism, not a expansionist nationalism, but the kind of nationalism that says, I love my country and I need to look out for my country. A democratic nationalism, right? There's nothing wrong with that. You go to South America, lefties, Marxists, Leninists, socialists, but they're nationalists. But they're the kind of nationalists that says, my country is Venezuela, I love my country, Venezuela, and you should love yours too. I don't see anything wrong with that kind of nationalism, right? It's not an ethno-nationalism. It's not an ultra-nationalism. It's one that says there's nothing wrong with loving your country, and you should love yours too. That's fine. It's not a superior nationalism. I think that will be the result of this. And I think to some extent we'll start to see that in the US. I think in the same way that's going to happen outside of the empire, in the same way that the empire is ramping up the authoritarianism and the brutishness against Africa and other countries, and they're ramping it up against the people in the US and in their empire, that the people in the US, in their US empire, are going to respond the same way. And that ultimately, this is the end of unipolarity. And as I said, I think the important thing is that there are some adults in the room, and I'm glad of that, because I think that gets us through this thing alive. And peace to my brother Scott Ritter. They tossed him off, but they ain't gonna stop Scott. Just like anybody that knows me knows, one of my favorite guys online is one of my favorite people online is Ryan Christian over at The Last American Vagabond. And that's because he was the first guy that I really saw that when the system said, we're going to cut you off, we're going to deplatform you, we're going to take you out, that Ryan Christian said, screw you, I'm going to do what I want. And I'm going to keep doing what I believe in, and I'll do it wherever I can. You can do what you want, but I ain't going to stop. That was important to me. That was very, very important to me. So I got a lot of respect for Ryan Christian for doing that. And I respect people. I personally respect people who are willing to stand up and fight. I don't respect people who, as soon as somebody tells you to, to do what they, do what they want you to do, that you just throw in the towel. And there's Scott Ritter, same thing with Scott. You can agree with Scott about some things. You can disagree. Scott, I love him. I disagree with him about some things. I agree with him about some things. But here's what I'll say about Scott Ritter. He ain't afraid to say what the hell he believes in. That's all you can ask for people. All right. Thanks a lot, everybody. Got to go. Let's see what we got here. Oh, my gosh. Well, gang, here's what I'm going to have to do, because I am in the middle of nowhere. Actually, somewhere. I'm in South Carolina. But I'm not going to be able to answer my super chats now. When I get back, I'm going to do a show, and on that show, I'm going to go through all the super chats from when I was gone. So I'm going to try to be on regularly. It will be from the cab of a pickup truck, so it ain't exactly, in the background's not exactly going to be, the greatest studio in the world. But hey, what do you want? Good grammar, good taste. Thanks a lot, everybody. Peace. I'm out. Oh my gosh, is that Danny Highfong? Let me see what Danny Highfong has to say. I can't believe he's in. He says, great stream, Garland. About to make my stream public in 10 minutes. Hope to see you all at 9 p.m. Eastern. All right, Danny Highfong. So don't forget, he's over there at the left lens. Good friend, good guy, doing good work. Danny Highfong. Thanks a lot, everybody. Make sure if you're not following him, you follow Danny. Thanks a lot, Sparky and Rolf and Chicken Patty and Valley S and everybody who supports me and supports this stream. Not just me, supports this show, and supports all the alternative media out there. All right. Thanks a lot, everybody. And I'll be back again soon. Peace. I'm out.